First of all, thank you for choosing my session about hacking Sitecore. It's an honor to have you all here. This session will be a little bit more special because I hope you will all stay for the entire session and not scoot out the door going to patch your Sitecore, even though you might want to do it after this session, because after this session, everybody in here will actually be able to exploit almost up to a late version of Sitecore, okay? So, how's this SUGCON conference going so far? Enjoying it? Yeah, psyched up, okay. Now we just want to see something, okay. So yeah, who am I? My name is Thomas Stern. I'm working in Pencha, and I've been working in Pencha for 15 years. And I used to be an MVP, no more, sadly, but that leaves more time for hacking. And I love security, and I've been in love with security for as long as I can remember. It started back in the days hacking SimCity safe games, editing in hex editors just to get a little bit of money to buy the next hospital. Then I continued on to Warcraft, editing safe games to cheat my friends so I had more wood, and just a mess. So, in this session is divided into 3 parts. The first part is me teaching you all the skills needed to use the exploits that we're going to use later. And in the third part, we are going to choose once we have the access to the Sitecore environment, what should we do with it? And that's up to you. So we can be really malicious, but it's up to you what you want to do in the end, okay? So to make this session a little bit more interactive, I highly encourage you to ask a dogging good question. And I got a dog for you if you ask a dogging good question. And you can get one as long as I have in stock. My kids has been nagging me to bring some home. I have 4 kids, so...
Please disappoint them.
Yeah, exactly. Don't hesitate. I mean, shout at me, yell at me, throw at what you have in your hands at me, anything, okay? Some of the technique can seem a little bit advanced, so let's just stop for a second, take a breather, ask the question, get it out of the way, okay? Any questions so far? No? Rubber ducks? Okay. Also, a little bit of a downer. I know you guys usually rate sessions on how many GIFs that are in the presentations. I have 1. This is the one. And also, I'm not going to show any 0 days. I actually like my life as it is, without Sitecore Legal on my back, or any legal department for that matter. The technique, I repeat, the techniques used here are used in the wild as adversaries or malicious persons will use some of these techniques, okay? So that brings up the next slide, which is, do not, on any circumstance, use any of these techniques unless you got explicit permission from the system owner. I cannot stress it enough. Also be aware that special permission may be required on cloud providers, Google, Amazon, Azure, and so on. For some of the cloud providers, you can just go ahead and hack the shit out of them, okay? Also be aware that hacking on pipelines in Azure or Vercel pipelines or Sitecore pipelines is a strictly no-go. I think I covered my ass. Thomas, you're hiding in the back, but I guess you got my back ones. Yes. Any questions about that? Are you allowed to hack just about anything? No. Okay, great. So today we are going to see what is called a CVE. We are actually going to see 3 different CVEs. And a CVE, or a CVE is just short for common vulnerability and an exposure. And it's actually just a database of large vulnerabilities or flaws in software, hardware, whatever. And it's maintained by the American organization called MITRE. It's a huge database ranging way, way back. And it's actually fairly easy to get a CVE. You just need to find that vulnerability in some product, you name it. And then you apply for this. The process takes some time, but it's doable. What is important when you look at a CVE is actually the title, or the CVE number. So the number is given by CVE, then the dash, the year, and then some arbitrary number. So you can always, if you need to find the latest, just go in, have a look, CVE 2.20.23, that's probably pretty lately or new bug. And then the next thing you have to look at is what is the type of vulnerability. That could be an RCE. Anybody in here knows what an RCE is? Bash, you're not allowed to raise your hand, but yeah. Yeah, you're completely right. It could be XSS, remote code execution, RCE, whatever, IDOR, you name it. The next thing that is important is the vulnerability or the CVSS score, Common Vulnerability Scoring System. And that says something about how severe the vulnerability is, but don't be fooled. A low score doesn't mean it's a low or it's a non-critical vulnerability, because you could chain multiple attack vectors or vulnerabilities together and achieve a higher score. Okay, so maybe you have an XSS of 3, but as you will see, not that I'm going to chain anything together, that could leave you to access to an environment, but what could you do in the environment? That depends on the next vulnerability and so on. Okay, any questions about CVE so far? No? The picture you see here is actually taken from CVE details, and that's my favorite place to go to look for CVEs. I haven't got that many slides, it's more or less all hands-on. So the next thing we're going to do is doing a hacking primer. So I need you all to be kind of a level, so you know when we're doing or showing you stuff, that what is happening in the backend, okay? The first thing we're going to talk about is shell types. What is a shell type? A shell is when the attacker, malicious person, good person in my case, has some direct code execution, like having a PS remote session in your PowerShell window. That's more or less the same type. So you divide shells into two types, a reverse shell and a bind shell. Each has its own benefits. The reverse shell is when the attacker spawns a process on the other end that connects outwards to the attacker. It has some benefits, mostly if the target, in this case, whatever Sitecore instance you have, is locked down by firewalls, it's easier to get the target to connect outwards, okay? And also, it could be that the target is buried very, very deep in some company network, old forgotten server, what do we have now? But it can still connect out. And the reason why servers often can connect out is because you often want to update servers. And then you can say, couldn't we just limit what kind of ports are open? And you're completely right. But which 2 ports do you think is often left open? Anyone want to guess? Come on. 80 is often closed. 443 is correct, right? It's HTTPS. So why don't you just use that port for connecting out to your reverse shell? And before 443, what is happening? What are your computer doing? DNS resolution, right? Port 53 is almost always left open also. Perfect target for attackers. Let's just connect over DNS. There even exist C2 frameworks that do all the exfiltration of data via DNS. So, I mean, have to monitor your egress traffic. The opposite of a reverse shell, and by the way, the reverse shell is the only one we're going to see today. The opposite is the bind shell, where the attacker spawns a process on the target system and connects inwards. Beneficial when you have a server that can't reach out to the internet, or again, buried very, very deep in some internal company facing where the zones, internet zones, or whatever is set up so it can't connect out to anything. Then we have a third type that is kind of a subset of the bind shell, which is a web shell. And that we are also going to see today, but that is where you put in a malicious web page on a system, like Sitecore, any web server for that instance, and you are allowed or can use, you can execute code via that one. Any questions so far? I'm asking because it's going to get a lot faster in a second. Okay, so on my system here, I got a Windows 10 host, I got VMware installed, and I got 2 virtual machines. So it's also getting hot up here. One machine is a Windows 10 with Sitecore 10.1. So how many in here are running Sitecore 10.1? Okay. Take mental image, see if they leave. How many are running Sitecore 8.2? Those people are okay. 9.1? Okay, impressive. So also the Windows Server has firewall enabled, but has disabled antivirus. This is not an AV course, but it's doable to avoid AV. Then I got my attack box, which is a Kali distribution, Linux distribution, and it's created by Offset Security. Yeah. Some of the techniques and tools that we're going to use today are by using what's already installed in the system. We're going to see PowerShell, a little bit of C#, and when we are using tools already installed of the system, we are doing what is called living off the land. And that is also a huge, it got a huge fan base because often Windows binaries is signed by Microsoft and not caught by antivirus. So kind of leaves an open gap there. And you cannot only it's not just PowerShell. Actually, for Windows, there are a lot of things you can do by downloading, using unintended paths to download stuff and run stuff, such as running a DLL or using cert util to download whatever malicious payload you have. No need to create your own. You could, of course, but why not just use what's already on the system? Then for Linux, you got what is called, you got the same. There are 2 projects. I highly suggest you go read on these URLs because it's entertaining to see what's actually doable on Windows machines and Linux machines out of the box in a malicious way. Okay, I think we're ready to dive into the hacking primer hands-on code. And again, get explicit permission. Do not do this without explicit permission for system owners. I covered my ass now, so if you get in trouble, it's on you. Okay, so here I have a Kali machine. I will log in. If I could type, yeah. You were? Maybe I should stop the presentation. There we go. Better? And I should also have a Windows host coming up here, hopefully. There we go. So in my Kali machine, I'm going to start a lot of windows, I know. That's how Hacker works, right? Floating stuff. So here I have a folder. In that folder, I have some payloads. Not very interesting at the moment. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a Python server. This is running on port 80. It could be whatever, right? So this is just a simple web server. You can do that. It's a module inside in Python. Then I'm going to switch over to my Windows machine. And the first thing I would like to show is actually one of the benefits of PowerShell. And that is you can run the .NET, right? It's nice and easy, and there's a lot of things you can do. One of the things you can do is instantiate a new object. And one of the objects that is nice to have is you have to download your payload from offsite, so you could do a system.net.web. I'm going to cheat a little bit and do like this. Nobody saw. I'm going to download a file. And as you can see, I'm in the Windows task folder now. And do anybody know why I'm in the Windows task folder? It's for the experiment. For this, it's just, but you're going to see why later. But this is because often if the target is locked down a little bit more, if the system is just maintained by somebody that cares a little bit about security, and keep in mind security is hard, so I'm not pointing any fingers, then they would probably have used something like AppLogger, which is an old kind of tool, but that tool allows for, you cannot run certain unsigned binaries like exe files, you cannot install updates, and you're also restricted where you're able to download files. So often when you install AppLogger, people just tick off all the boxes, but forget some global writable folders like Windows Task and Windows Temp. So these files or these paths will often always be global writable. So go ahead, throw whatever in there. You can do it on your own machine. So if you have a machine where your IT department doesn't allow access for writing on the C drive, just throw in the Windows Task folder. So let's start with the hello world of hacking, which is a calculator. Woo! Wasn't it fun? No, okay. So now I downloaded the calculator PS1 file, and all it does is shows a calculator. So that is just, instead of writing hello world in hacking, you always shows a calculator, right? But we can actually do a little bit better, because when touching disk, I'm allowing for antivirus to scan the file downloaded. I know it can do it in memory also. Windows has what is called AMSI, anti-malware scan interface. And if you're really into that, go look AMSI fails, which makes it's just a page that got huge scripts where you can bypass AMSI. And it's more or less 10 lines of code, so it doesn't really count as antivirus. So the next thing that we could do that is a little bit better than just downloading the file is executing it in memory. Oops, there we go. So now I'm using the web client, but I'm just downloading a string. Are you ready? Poof! No. Oh, it did write calc.exe, right? Not that interesting, okay. So look what happens when I pipe it over to invoke expression. Woo! I got a calculator. And invoke expression can be used in two ways, right? I can either do it like this and this. I use both throughout this presentation, so don't be, it does the same. Another calculator. That's already free calculators. Okay. And by the way, instead of doing download string, you could also do reflection in PowerShell. So you could actually write your own payload. I'm not saying you should, but you could write it in C# and use reflection in PowerShell to put it all in memory. So let's get our first reverse shell. So back on the Kali machine, I'm going to minimize my, my Python web server, but I'm going to leave it running, okay? Up here, I'm going to start what is called a netcat listener. Netcat is a network utility, and it runs both on Linux and Windows. It can be used for many ways, often used for catching shells. And with that running, it's listening on port 9001. So when you go home and repeat it, I know you will be caught by firewalls and that, So what you're going to see now is a Nishang reverse shell. And Nishang is a PowerShell. You can get it off GitHub. I modified it slightly. It's a, 800 lines of PowerShell function. In the bottom of the script, all I did was actually just call the function above, okay? So no. And also, Nishang will be caught by antivirus. So again, feel free to do whatever you like, but it will be caught. You could, of course, modify it yourself. So when I press enter now, I would expect the term to hang. And when switching back to my Linux machine, I would expect to have a interactive terminal. Woo, it's hanging. And there we go. I have my first terminal. So here I can write whatever code I would like, if I could spell. And I'm, of course, myself on the machine. Not that interesting. And I can do what. So I kind of owned myself, right? So when you saw all those, how many of you did actually have a busy winter in 2001 because of Log4Shell? Nobody? You didn't patch your solar installation?
We have people for that.
Okay. But they would be able to have a shell like this on your solar instance. And with that, they could pivot to other, okay, you get the point. Okay. Let's just kill a reverse shell here. And I will start up a new one. Because living off the land is not only in system-wise, it could also be in software. And wouldn't it be nice if Sitecore had something that just allowed me for getting a reverse shell, like clicking a button? So before I show you this, how many of you have Sitecore PowerShell extension installed? Keep it running. So I'm going to log in with the super secure, but then you're going to say, but you need a password, right? Do you know what the most often entrance is used or hacker gains when getting access to installations? It's either by default passwords or credential stuffing. So they just buy a huge database of passwords, start testing and running. So keep those multi-factor authentication alive. So this is on a VM with the SQL server and the Solar server running. So, any questions so far? If you can have a rubber duck? Yeah, sure you can. There you go. That wasn't so hard.
It's not a question, it's like a remark. On my presentation, which I did previously I did a slide comparing the admin tools from 10.3 and from XM Cloud. And there is new PowerShell.aspx running on XM Cloud, which is actually the shell you just explained. You need to enable it. So you need to go and create a file called enabled in a specific folder, and then it works. Like I can demonstrate it, and it's enabled on my XM Cloud instance. And I can do really everything there.
Yeah, what he said. So, no, you can keep it. It's for you. You said something it wasn't. So much of a question that an explanation, but you can keep it. So, this is just me clicking on PowerShell. Can you see the line? Yeah. It's the exact same line, right? Let me just ensure that I still have my... So now I'm going to click execute, and you say, yeah, but you still need access to the server because you need the passwords. Okay, so what if there is an XSS or something that allows me for having access to this? So it could be that small, low-hanging CVS score of 2 actually meant that I could get a higher score, right? So entering in the password, nothing happens. That's bad. But over here, I actually have my shell. And before I do the who am I, which is actually a good thing that the behavior you should actually monitoring on your system is, if anybody runs who am I on your system, you're probably owned. So can anybody guess who I am right now? App-pool user. Nice. And what is one of the best privileges app-pool users has, you think? Nope. It's the SC impersonate privilege. You gotta love it. Keep that one in mind because we're going, if you choose, you have to choose the path once we're done, which path we should go, but that one is neat. It's so awesome to have.
So that means you can get rid of annoying manager in your company.
Yeah. So let's go back. So now you are actually able to understand what is going on in the background when we start to using the exploits, okay? And the first one is a CVE 2021 38366, and it's a pure beauty, and it got a CVSS score of 6.8, so not that high. And the reason why I think it's a beauty is because I'm the owner of it. Thank you. And it's actually one of my favorite kind of vulnerability, which is a file upload vulnerability that can lead to RCE. And as you can see, people in here still staying, even though it's applying for Sitecore 10.1, okay? It's a post-auth, which means you need to be authorized or authenticated against Sitecore, so keep that in mind, okay? Let's switch back. In the background, I will just start my Netcat listener, otherwise I will forget. So this Sitecore 10 installation has been security hardened, except one little thing, and that is I've left the file explorer. That, of course, should be removed, but I went through the entire checklist that Sitecore have for doing the security hardened stuff, okay? And I'll just would like to show you that it's true what I'm saying. So this is the file explorer, and I will try to upload a malicious, or actually just an ASPX file. And the ASPX files I'm going to upload will allow for what is called a web shell. And I'm going to show the web shell in just a second. So here, I'm clicking upload. Sorry, really slow. It's tough to running Sitecore on VMs. So while it's loading, maybe we should see the ASPX file. So what it is a simple ASPX file. It takes in an argument, which is the string, or actually the command I want to. No need to take pictures. You can download it off GitHub. And this is running the old cmd.exe file, so it takes that, spawns a new process, takes the output of that process, and puts it back on the screen. Very, very simple, okay? So I'm going to choose a file. I'm going to choose my shell, that not that good of a name, if I'm very lead. I'm going to upload it, and I cannot upload it with the SPX. So that's go for everywhere inside Sitecore. I cannot upload any SPX files. Unless, of course, navigate to the update center, which is it's deprecated from Sitecore 10.1 and upwards. Hence, no, 10.1 is included. It still hasn't. So in the update center, I can install custom updates, which is nice. How many in here are using this update center? Okay. Don't mind this one here. That one can't be. Oh, and also because I rebooted my machine, I actually just to know, will make sure that yes, antivirus is off. So now I'm going to install my custom upload, which is my SPX file. Oh, damn it. It couldn't upload. I got the warning behind here. But what happened in the background is actually the damage has already been done. Oh, there we go. I thought I just checked. That was why I said I had to check. Do you want? Yeah, of course. I don't care. Also, forget it. My machine is not on the net, so you cannot hack me. So let's just upload it again. There we go. I think it's uploaded. Boom! Inside your Sitecore installation. And remember, this is, I just like saying boom, it's just I would have gone for the I'm in kind of, the old hacker one. Oh well, if I could try it, I could go for, so I can see this is the system because I'm running at, and I can also execute PowerShell. So if I'm doing the ls thing, which is similar to the dir, and of course the big thing is I could execute my reverse shell. You've seen it tons of times, or at least a couple of times now. The site is hanging. Oh, I have 15 minutes, that's perfect, and I got my reverse shell. So here, I'm the app pool user again. Okay, I would speed up a little bit because I want you to see the most thing in the end, okay? Nice, the remediation for this is of course just disallow access to the update center. Next, we're going to talk about deserialization attacks. I'm going to do it very quickly because time. And for that, we're actually just going to demo what a deserialization attack is. And deserialization attack often happens when you let unsanitized user input pass directly to your deserialization code, okay? And I got two examples, and we're going to use Living Off the Land to compile them. So here, I'm going to use Newtonsoft, always in Sitecore installations. It takes in a string, and this string is by using called type obfuscation. It's actually spawning a new process, and in that process, you guessed it, it does our hello world of calc.exe, right? Usually when you see deserialization attacks, it will happen with the base 64 encoded string, so you won't see strings like that. So let's compile our first exploit. There we go. So I'm just using the .NET compiler here. Nice, installed on the server. I'm going to compile it. I'm going to compile it as a target exe called nt.exe file using my input file nt.cs, and I'm going to reference the Newtonsoft. And hopefully I will see a calculator. Nice. Woohoo! The next thing, which is actually used in the next CVE we're going to see, is using the object state formatter, which is used when deserializing view state, for instance, and that is initialized in Sitecore in an unsecure way, which means without any parameters. So if you're just newing up your new object state formatter, it's vulnerable to this type of attacks. For this, we're going to need a little tool called YSOSerial. And Visual Serial exists both for JavaScript, for Java, and for .NET. And all it does is it allows you to create easily malicious serialized content. And it does this. I'm targeting the binary formatter, and I want a PS object, and I want it encoded in 64-bit, base 64, and I want it to run the calculator. And it generates this strong. So we're going to press the I believe button and just copy in the string, so you can see it's here. And I will compile it if I go back. Whoop. There we go. I'm going to compile it to exploit.exe, a famous name, will bypass every single AV, and I got a calculator. So now you've seen what's happening behind the scenes, right? I'm taking some malicious input that is unsanitized, passed directly to my serialization logic. So for this CVE, whoops, and let's go like this. 2019-9874, we got a CVSS score of mesmerizing 7.5. I can't take any credit for this. This is inactive, and I highly suggest going to read this RCE. It's great reading. And in Sitecore version 8 up to 9, you can do pre-auth, which is bad. And for 9.1, you have to be authenticated. So let me just stop this again, and I will switch over. For this, we're going to do it via our Kali machine. I'm going to start my Netcat listener. And I'm going to use I'm just going to make sure that the site is running. And I'm going to use a web proxy called Burp. That's not anything special, it's just a web proxy, so I'm proxying all my traffic from my web browser in via this proxy and then onwards to whatever. And I can repeat requests being made. So the vulnerability exists in the create new user ASPX file. And down here, what's actually is if you pass in a cross-site request forgery token with test or anything else, it will take your token from the post input, unsanitized. So with the site running, hopefully, we're just going to press send. Poof, and it's hanging, which is a good thing, because over here, I got my connection, and I'm the app pool user again. Nice, or not nice, depending. So I'm hurrying a little bit because I want to show you the really cool stuff. So for the last one, CVE 2021-4223, we got a CVSS score of 10. That is bad. And the author is, I'm not going to butcher his name here, did a really good job, and yeah, go read it yourself. It's yes?
Is 10 the maximum?
Yeah, it's 10 is the maximum. The question was, is 10 the max in the CVSS score? It is. There you go.
Thank you.
So let's go back. And for this, we're going to use Burp once again. It's open source. Oh, no, it's not open source. It's freeware. You can just download it. Great tool. Highly suggest you use it for everything. So the vulnerability exists in the report ASX file, and it simply takes in an XML. 10 minutes, that's perfect. I'm ahead of time now. Phew. And what the author found out was when you craft your XML in a certain way, it will actually just pass it and deserialize it. So for this, you don't need Visual Serial because you can just put in your whatever code you like in the button, and you got code execution, right? How neat is that? So no need to spawn any calculators here. So remember, the report is going in the background, so you won't see the shell hanging here or this being hanging here. And I already got my shell. I'm going to leave this shell because we're going to use it in just a short while. So any questions so far?
What version of Sitecore is this?
This was running 8.2 because it was unauthenticated. But if you upgraded and left in your report ASX, you might still be vulnerable. Oh, there you go. Which one do you want? Well, the pirate one? So before I stop, I would also like Bas, who did he's going to post, just stand up, Bas. He's just going to post some blogs about Sitecore and security. We kind of coordinated, he should stand up, but go talk to him because there's more in the PowerShell and yeah. So for the closing demo, I actually got a few. When I did the presentation, I had like 2 hours of content I wanted to show, so yeah, I had to cut it a little bit down. So for the closing demo, you guys have to choose. Now we got access on the system. We are the hackers. We are the really fucking evil people here. We're going to own Evil Corp. So we can do one of two things. We can either pivot, move laterally, lateral movement, meaning we're going from one server to another server. Kind of not so funny in this case because it's the SQL server we're going to gain access on, but it's on the same server. Or we could do something really cool, which is we could go for a low privilege app pool user to a system administrator, and as a system administrator, we could dump all the credit or all the credential inside memory of the host. Meaning, when you're thinking credentials, what? Every single person ever logged onto the machine, we're gonna get their passwords. You want the boring thing? Okay. No. So you choose privilege escalation. So for this, we're going to use, remember when I said that one of the best privileges hackers can see is the impersonation privileges. That is because the way it's not a flaw, but it's the way Windows is designed. So we're going to use what is called impersonate pipes, which is the tool we're going to use. I'm going to minimize this. And I'm going to use some of my slide notes here. We're going to use what is called a print spoofer. Best name ever, right? Can you still read it even though, because we need all the windows, I can maybe make it a little bit. There we go. And just to show you, the download thing that I said in the beginning, this should fail because I don't have write access to the Windows folder. Who cares? You can always just use C Windows temp. I'm going to download it. You can see the connection down here. The print spoofer tool is going to spawn a new thread. In that thread, it says, I want to impersonate somebody. Can I do that? And the thread itself, it's kind of simplified. It's going to say, of course you can impersonate. Who do you want to impersonate? The system administrator. Perfect, right? So the way that print spoofer does this is by saying, okay, you can run something, and you of course can execute the program. And which command would you like to run? The PowerShell? Yeah, I'm done in less than 5 minutes. No need to worry. So over here, I'm going to start my netcat listener, and then I'm going to tell print spoofer, let's start PowerShell, invoke our Nishang reverse shell. Whoop! And of course I did it wrong because I'm not in the C. Also tagging as fast as a, there we go. And I got a reverse shell. Who do you think I am over here now? Come on. I just said it like 2 minutes ago. Boo! Perfect. So for the last and final part of this, I promised you that we are going to dump all the credentials for all users ever logged in on the system. Since last reboot, we're going to use a tool called Mimikatz. And Mimikatz is created by, not that one. Mimikatz is a tool created by a guy called Gentviki. It does all sorts of things, but this is just one of them. And that's still not the right one. Oh, no, it was. Let me just delete it. And while it's running, why do you think what I'm going to dump in earlier versions of Windows, it dumped clear text credentials. In later versions, unless you did something really stupid in your registry, it's just going to dump the NTLM hash. And the NTLM hash is what is a hash of your password. So here, I can scroll up, And you're thinking, yeah, sure, but what can you do with the NTLM hash? You can do what is called a pass the hash attack. And you might be saying, let me do, I know what I'm going to. Think of it as if it was a system administrator that actually logged on, I could actually dump your entire domain, right? I could just authenticate against your domain. So this is the hash. I could use it to get a remote desktop session. I could take it offline and crack it. And this is the final part of the presentation, because of course I did it. And I took it offline just for called crack station. You could pass in whatever. I took the hash you just saw, passed it in, and it came out clear as a password. So now I have access, since I'm successful, it's not that interesting. Okay, that's pretty much it. If you want to get started, I know you have questions, so if you want to get started, I highly suggest going into these. Follow these guys, all great security guys. And then any questions? Come on, no questions? I have to, what?
Can I have a duck?
Yeah, you can. Now I have to bring in all the ducks home. There you go.
Thanks.
Why do you need so many calculators?
There you go. You want one as well? You got one as well. I probably need to, since you didn't, hey, do you deserve them? No questions?
We're speechless.
There you go out there. Oh. Let me try again. Here you go. Heads up. Thank you very much for